Hi, I'm Elaine Ewing, and I'm here for our Instagram live series called 30 Years in 30 Days. And I am going to be talking to Sean Gallagher tonight about the making of the first comprehensive teacher training manual. Tonight we're talking
Right.
about the making of the first comprehensive teacher training manual.
Uh-huh.
And you were talking about uh, the synergy exercise systems
Mm-hmm.
yesterday. So that
Yep.
was when you had first started teacher training. So that was really
Yep.
the first comprehensive teacher training ever.
Right. Yes.
So now we're talking about the manual that you made.
Right.
And now this manual was not part of the synergy, or was it?
No, it wasn't. So I found something. Here's We Ties manual.
Oh, cool.
So, and it has little tabs that show you, different things. And it's interesting because in this manual, it's basics level 2, 3, 4, and 5. And that's the same thing that Steve did with Synergy in the beginning. So he followed what Wetai did, basically, and Ramana, that's what they were doing at the time. When we did the manual, that changed to basic, intermediate, advanced. So we went from 5 different sections to 3. And that was, something that we started to do, comprehensively to look at teacher training and how to put that all together.
Now, do you want to give people a little synopsis about? So, Wee Tai was the owner of the business before you, and he had a manual and a training program, but it was
So,
expensive.
yeah, so basically, when even before Joe died, there were people who were trying to get Joe to do training. And I have an audio tape of him that they recorded. That was like one of the first things they did. And then it didn't really happen until Weetai bought it, and he was the fourth owner of the Pilates studio business after Joe died. It was Clara, and then the investors, and then Isotoner, and then Weetai. So he was the fourth, and I was the fifth. And when he did it, if you when you look at this, it's Gail Ison's and Philip Friedman's book, basically.
For the
It was
mat.
for the mat, and then for the reformer, there was that, and then there was the pictures from. He also put the pictures from Return to Life, right?
Okay.
So that's what he had, but for each exercise, it was like, and there was levels. So there's like, it said level 5, level, different levels, and it says memorize, do it, exam, modify, therapeutic.
Well, can you say that
Again,
again? What does it say?
memorize, do it, exam, modify, therapeutic. That's, like things that you could write about it.
Okay.
And then for the reformer, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pages for the reformer.
Wow.
That's what he had. So, and basically, it was the first thing he had was just, like this was the card that they had for the exercises.
Now, do we
Very,
know what is that based on? Was that like a card that like Joe
yeah,
had?
well, it was from the studio. I don't know if it was Joe or it came after. I'm not really sure.
Cool.
But it basically, it says the footwork, the 100, overhead, coordination, rowing, swan, swim, so it sort of takes you through the series, the whole series. And then it breaks it down, footwork, 100, stomach massage, chest. So yeah, it was just basically, it took you through one through, and then it talked about the exercise. Like short spine, position, movement, doesn't have anything. Problem areas, adjust, hip, back, neck, knees. So there was stuff on there that, that he used, but didn't really very limited.
So now
So,
was this the 7 pages of reformer? It doesn't sound like it was basic reformer as we teach now. I mean, those are not
no,
basic
it was
exercises.
everything. It was everything on that list. So he just,
He
spelled it
just
out
put it
like,
all on 7 pages.
right. Yeah. Just
Okay.
like, there it is. No breakdown, no, none of that, So, and then with Synergy, this was followed, but then they started to add the other apparatus, right? So that's sort of where that came from. And then when as soon as I bought the trademark, one of the first things that I did was I wanted to make a manual. I mean, comprehensive manual with pictures, multiple exposure, and spell it out and, do all that. And, talking to Romana. And, we're talking with Carol tomorrow and she'll talk about all that because she basically did a lot of that work. She was the one who wrote it up, based on what Romana told her, then Romana approved it, or we can talk to her about, what that process was and all that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to
But,
that.
so that's sort of what that was. But, one of the things that I did with the first manual was, that was to be able to have, a much bigger thing. So if, this manual is about maybe, a half an inch, and the manual I have is like an inch and a half. So there was a lot more information, a lot more pages and everything else. And, for the reformer, each page was an exercise with pictures and, all the spring settings and, all the settings, and then also how to do the exercise and then sort of what it was looking for.
Right. Okay. So now, you said Weetai had all of the mat and all of the reformer, but how did so it was you, Carol, and Romana working on the manual? Is that how it was at the
But
time?
basically, what was more than that? I mean,
Okay.
I had, now you have a way there's all this software, right, that you can fairly easily, if they know what somebody's don't know what they're doing in design, where you can like lay it all out. I've had that, I've redone it that way. Well, back then that's not how it was done. So, I mean, it took a lot more time, energy, and money. And also, we didn't do, we had to do a photo shoots, right? And, we'll talk about that with Carol as well. But the photo shoots, the first one we didn't work because everybody was wearing colors that I think it was mostly black, or, it wasn't really.
Of course, it was mostly black. Come on.
But when we tried to do multiple exposure, it disappeared. So you couldn't see their legs. You couldn't see the extremities movement or the
So do
body
you want to
movement that well.
explain to everybody what multiple exposure is?
Well, if you looked at, didn't we share one of those pictures? Didn't we share the pictures for that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the two pictures that we shared, that's multiple exposure. Where, to me, it's kind of, my idea was to, how do you see the full expression of the exercise with one picture? And it was sort of like, a mini video before. Now everybody's got a video on their phone and this and that. Well, back then, that just wasn't reality. I mean, there was
Right.
no smartphone. There was, if you wanted to do video, it was expensive, fairly expensive to do, and it wasn't so easy and simple. And this way, it was like you could take a picture, and that picture, you looked at it, and you sort of knew what the whole exercise was. So that medium where, without spending a fortune, I could still get that understanding and be able to let people see that.
Yeah. So the pictures you're talking about that we shared in the
Right.
post.
Well,
This,
so like here's one right there.
yeah,
So
perfect.
you see that, and that's Carol on the high chair, and she's going up and down. So you see you see movement. I mean, it's flat, it's two-dimensional, but because, and it's one picture, but there's multiple pictures within that picture. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really what multiple exposure is. And there's one, she's there too on the the reformer as well.
Yeah.
So it allows you to sort of see, it's taking, multiple pictures and then seeing it all at once, and little
Cool.
shadows and stuff. So that was what I was trying to do with that. Um, and the problem was, when we did that, the first photo shoot didn't work. And then when I couldn't do color, because to do a color manual would have been prohibitively expensive back then.
Yeah.
Now it's a little bit, more affordable and doable. So, but back then it wasn't. And the problem is that when we did that, the multiple exposure black and white really didn't come out as well either. You don't see it as well as you do when you see the color. I mean, it's
Okay.
there, but it wasn't as good. And also, we didn't do pictures; we did vlogs. So basically, vlogs is it's a way to do pictures without having to make the little pictures, and it was a cheaper way to do things. but you
Okay.
could still see it. So we did the V-locks, and what we had to do is the page was set, and then there was a little box, and then we would take the V-locks and crop, take that V-locks, it was like doing a contact sheet, right? You do a
Okay.
contact sheet with a V-locks, and then they would be cut out and then pasted in, each one pasted in separately, and then that was the main manual, and then that was then sent to be copied.
Okay. So it sounds like a lot of work.
Well, it was, and I had Chris Maddox, who was working for me. He did a lot of the layout and setup. He's the son of Matt Maddox, who's when there's a picture of his dad with the breathing apparatus, and he was
The
showing him
Arrow
how to breathe.
Mill.
Right, showing him how to breathe,
Yes.
and that was his dad. So there was that. There's all these little connections.
That's the picture. Like, if we could describe it, it's like Joe and he's with a man, and the man is breathing into something that, like a tube, and it's like Joe and the guy, and it would almost be the breathalyzer, but it's actually not.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So cool. So how he worked for you? Like, was he a PT or?
No, no, he was just, he was a dancer, and he was trying to get, I mean, he needed work, and I hired him to, and he had that
Cool.
skill, so he started to do all that, and so, I basically financed, the manual. Like everybody's like, it's Romana's Romano. Well, she didn't pay for it. She was very involved in it, but I basically paid for the photo shoots. I also paid the photographer for the copyrights. This is what people don't get. You can always, if you're willing to pay for it, and the photographer's willing to do that, you can buy the copyright. What I did was in the contract, he always gets credit. So when we
Mm-hmm.
use that picture, there's usually credit that he's the photographer, but I own the copyright, so I can use it any way I want, however I want, for as long as, I mean, all that. So that's the
Well,
difference.
studio owners and business owners are usually the ones who finance
Right,
things that happen. Yeah.
right.
Exactly.
So, but that just because people are, say, oh, it has to be, if it's not the photographer, you don't own it. Well, that's just not the case. I mean,
Oh,
you can buy it, and I did. And so, and every person that was in the manual for the photo shoot, they signed a release.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
They got paid to be there, and there's a release that basically says we can use it any way we want, and that's what you do. I mean, that's how
Mm-hmm.
it's done.
Well, actually,
And
oh yes, sorry.
well, and if you want to be part of this, you sign the release. You don't sign the release, then you just don't do it, because that's how it works.
Okay. Well, I
So
was going to circle back to something around that topic, but before I do, I was wondering, how did you choose what is basic, intermediate, and advanced when you had all the exercises laid out in front of you? How did you organize it all?
well, that was really Carol to a
Okay.
certain extent, and Ramana, because they wanted to set, it was like it was five, and I was like, well, we can't really do that. That makes it, more difficult, and for training to be able to go and do the training. So it was sort of set up to be basic, intermediate, advanced.
Did you say it was five? Is that what you just?
Yeah, like in Wheat Ties, there was where does it say it here? Hold on. Levels. There were five levels:
Oh,
basic, level two, level three, level four, and level five. And
interesting.
Steve, when we did the synergy exercise, he followed that organization. When we did the manual, it was switched from that to basic, intermediate, and advanced, because
Cool.
it was like Romana wanted to make the system. And again, what people don't, people's like, well, Joe didn't do that. And you're right. But at the same time, when you walked into the studio, you didn't do snake twist day one, right? So, I mean, so the idea was looking at the exercises, looking at the foundation, and trying to come together with that. And we can talk, Carol can talk a lot more about that, because she spent the time talking with Romana and trying to figure it out and put it all together.
Yeah. Yeah, I look forward to that. Like, 'cause I want to ask her, how. maybe, okay, so they did decide there's going to be 3 levels, but how did they, choose where each exercise went? So I'd love
Right.
to
Well,
ask
that's
tomorrow.
part of it. It's, and
Yeah.
that changed a little bit, but it's pretty, clear that, it
Yeah.
was foundational.
Cool.
And if you look at it, when you look at the exercises in the system, you can see that it really is, basic is mostly flexion extension, and then intermediate starts to put in some rotation and side bending, and then the advance is really combinations and a lot more rotation. So that's, you see that progression, and that's sort of how people learn how to move. So, and it was based on what Joe's work was, and when you come in and you start to work out, what's the sequence that you would usually do, and that's what we put into basic, intermediate, advanced. It's like, there's that whole level of from beginning to where you get advanced, and where do you start to add these exercises, and what do you do in the beginning? Well, there's a whole bunch you do in the beginning, so they're basic. And then, as they get stronger and they get better, what do you do? Then you add the next layer. And when they get really, and then you do that, then you add the next layer. So that, but instead of 5, it was 3.
So you were talking about like just like organically to the people who are there, like what do you give people who are starting
Right,
out? Or like,
right.
well, this is what we give people who are starting out, and they're like, okay, so this is going to become the basic system. And then you
Yeah,
say, and then how do you progress them? And they were like, well, then I'll progress them to these exercises, and then you say, okay, that's the intermediate.
right.
That's how
Well,
okay.
so, and you see what Kathy says, those reformer well, it's poster, not posters. The reformer poster I've just produced, the 101. That was, Joe's first poster, for the reformer. And that's basic, it's mostly the basic exercise on the reformer. So it's,
But well, it's actually advanced though. It's rowing pretty much.
well, there's that, yes. So, but
So that's
but
interesting.
a lot, yeah, but there's a lot of them that are basic,
Uh-huh.
right? So,
Well, he did put rowing at the beginning though of the workout. So it's
hmm
interesting. It's like, it is such a complicated series. So I agree that it's advanced, but at the same time, interestingly enough, Joe did have that at the very beginning of the sequence. So
yep,
go figure.
go figure.
So now who were the people who were featured in the manual? Who were the models?
Okay, so you was Carol. There was
So
Andrew
this is
Carter,
Carol Dodge Baker,
Carol
just
Dodge Baker,
pick
yes,
who
to
we're
be
talking about.
clear, yes, Carol
Okay.
Dodge Baker,
Yeah.
Andrew Carter,
Okay.
uh, Dilla Mastra. Oh, I can't remember her last name.
Okay.
She got married, so she married Chris Potts, but her mess. Oh,
Okay.
maybe it'll come to me.
All right.
Dilla was in there. Peggy Protz. She moved to Seattle. Who else was in it? Well, let me get it, and let me
Okay.
think about it. I think that was it. I think that might have been, most of the people that were there in the first one. And,
And
and
this
then the second one, there was other, we did another photo shoot, and it was Bob and a bunch of other people.
well,
So,
next week on Saturday we're talking about the second manual.
yes, we
So that's
are.
a little what sneak peek.
Right.
But were these people the teachers? Is that they were teachers?
They were students. They weren't
Oh.
necessarily they weren't all teachers. Some of them were students,
Mm-hmm.
and Peggy, they all became teachers,
Cool.
and they were in the process, and they were strong and flexible and able to do the work, and and most of them were dancers at one point. So again, it's it's that dancer influence, because
Yeah.
I always say this, dancers, they come to Pilates and they do it so well because they've spent 10 to 15 years working on their bodies to get strong and flexible, not necessarily exactly Pilates way and in some very imbalanced way, but
Mm-hmm.
they're still usually very strong and flexible, and they've spent 15 years learning how to reproduce movement, right? Dancing is looking at somebody and then doing it. So that when it comes to learning Pilates, that's a very important skill. So they tend to be able to do that well,
Mm-hmm.
and they also have the flexibility and strength to do it. So
Yeah. So that's cool. Now, when you were making the manual, anything happen? Did you have any situations like I know you're talking about not having a bar, so you use something like can you give us any little kind of
right, okay,
anecdotal
so
stories about that?
well, I mean, there, again, when we were at the photo shoot, and all of a sudden it's like we don't have a bar. but there was a physio ball. So we stuck the physio, so when you had to do it, whenever you needed a bar, instead of the bar, we used the ball. Romana did not like that. So that's why, she did not like that. But that's what we had, and that's the only thing we did. And so, and there were, when we did it, I did it fairly quickly, in months, not years.
Sure.
And, the, once the photos were done, because again, it's not like today where you can go, oh, I don't like that photo. Let's take another one. You did a photo shoot and it cost thousands of dollars. And if there was one photo that just wasn't exactly perfect, guess what you did?
You either used it or you did not use it.
You used it because you're not going to go reshoot for one or two photos. You're not going to
Right.
spend thousands of dollars. So you sort of like, okay, I can live with that. And then, what I said is that we'll make another one. And, and we
Eventually.
did. Well, the second manual. I mean, we'll
Yeah.
talk about that
Yeah.
when
Next
we
time.
talk about the second manual next weekend.
And now this time period we're talking about is 1992, right?
Yes,
Okay.
92 into I think the beginning of 93.
Okay.
So, but the photo shoots were 92,
Gotcha.
right?
Okay.
And so, and uh, we did, I think it was three. We did the first one, and it didn't come out. So I have all those photos, but I don't use them. And then what I did is I got everybody white unitards with a black background,
Okay.
and that really shows, the colors and the movement. So the opposite of what New York usually was, everybody liked to wear black, and I was making you wear white, and dancers don't like white because
No,
it shows everything and black hides everything.
not just dancers. Okay,
Oh,
just say
okay. Okay. Well,
no.
I'm just saying. Well, that's what I did. Mary, if you were in 2001, your manual was definitely the second manual, was not the first one.
Well, it says the copyright on it, right?
Right. If you look at your manual, it says copyright 1997. So that's tells you right there, because that it was an updated version.
Yeah. So now
So
was this first manual, I'm trying to remember, is this the one when you put the small barrel on the long box for horseback?
I think so.
I think so. Yeah, I remember that. So
Yep.
where did that, was that something that people were teaching, or was that something that you did in the moment at the photo shoot that,
I think that's what was being taught. I mean, that was a modification. Like you could do it, on that. You could put that on the long box and do it there because it was easier than digging in. I'm pretty sure that was being taught by
Mhm.
Romana. I don't know if it was taught by Joe, but it was definitely, taught by Romana. It was one of the things that you could do. I mean, we didn't just like, oh, let's throw that on there,
It wasn't like the
and
ball.
right. I don't
Oh,
think so.
okay.
But, hopefully Carol, will remember that more because, I basically left that up, because 92, I was, I've been taking classes and stuff, but I wasn't really, fully trained.
Hmm.
I never certified myself,
No,
so I never got a certificate with my signature on it.
you didn't know? I mean, it's not too
No,
late.
I know, I guess I could just take I have plenty of Romana signatures. I could just, put it on there and put my name and say, yeah, I'm certified,
You'd
but
pass, I think.
I won't
You'd
do that.
pass.
Well, no, it doesn't,
No,
I don't need that. You know why I don't need that? Because
because
I have written testimony that Romana said under oath that she basically said she trained me the way Joe trained her, and that I'm fully comprehensively trained, and I'm as good, and she even says that I'm the one that should and carry on the work after
right.
her. So
No,
I'm not
you don't
too. I
this
don't need a
signed
certificate.
by you.
Yeah,
No.
right, by me. So
Okay.
that's
Yeah. Now, the apparatus that you used in the manual, was that rich?
So Jennifer says, yes, Romana taught me the small barrel on the reformer for horseback. I love it. Right, but I'm just not sure if that's the way, there's nothing in the archives that show Joe doing that, but I definitely know Romana. I'm pretty sure that was from Romana. It wasn't something we just threw on there.
Okay.
Okay.
So I was just asking you, I don't know if you heard my question.
I didn't, sorry.
The apparatus that you used in the manual, was that rich tone apparatus?
No, that was
Okay.
that was mostly Steve apparatus.
So he built it.
Yeah, or he's the one who had it built. Yes, that was
I was gonna ask.
because
Okay.
one of the things that we did is that when I went into business with him, part of what the deal was that he was going to make me some apparatus.
Okay.
And so and when we split, I got a certain amount of apparatus, and that's what we used for that training or
Because
for
I
that.
just saw that when you were showing the multiple exposure pictures, you had a
Hmm.
picture of the apparatus there. Can you show it again?
Yeah, so this is from this was we I believe it was the early '90s, and it was a flyer for uh, uh, um, I think it was the PT conference, and it was like '93, I believe.
Okay.
Might have been, I think so. And it says the Pilates studio, and it has a trademark,
Mm-hmm.
and it's showing, this picture here has the Cadillac, the Reformer, it has a small barrel on top,
Mm-hmm.
so, and then this is the ladder barrel and the chair. And this chair, Wonder Chair, is really a combo chair. There was a
Oh,
piece that you could slide. You can see. I don't know if you can see it, but on the sides, see that
yeah, I
little
see that.
that's where the piece would slide in and it would lock in.
So if on that Wonder chair, like the sides are like slanted straight, is that just a design that Steve just
That's how Steve made it.
cool?
So I mean,
Okay.
he 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 didn't follow necessarily the exact the copy of whatever because he didn't have one.
Yeah.
So he sort of like he knew what it was, and he probably I think he did measurements and then just made it. So because that's just a piece of plywood, right, stuck together. Joe's was a little bit more intricate and ornate and other things that he added to it. So different,
Cool.
except for the one I have in Beckett,
I was just
which is
thinking
pretty
about that.
much just plywood, but no padding.
Oh yeah, it's
Right.
hardcore. It is.
So that I mean that manual was really it was to me. And I said this about, before, Weetai was forward thinking. He wanted to do all these things. And to me, as soon as I bought the trademark, first thing I did was like, we need a manual. We need to train teachers. We need to open studios, and start promoting this and putting it out there and really, solidifying that. And that's what I tried to do.
So
And
it
so,
sounds yes.
well, I opened up in LA, right, fairly quickly. And then I was in Seattle. I mean, I had multiple, facilities
Well,
within
and
by
that happens
by
to be
95 or 96, I had a lot of, places.
Monday's topic. Just saying.
Just saying.
We have a nice schedule laid out. But what I was going to say was, it sounds like when you became the new owner of the business, you sort of to gel things together and organize things up.
What do you mean?
Initiate that. Well, you started, what you just said, all the stuff that you were like, you decide you were
Well,
like
and
manual,
we
we need
right,
studios, we need training.
right. Well, and look, we Ty had started that. It didn't happen, right? So
Right.
what like it's like everything else. It's even like Joe,
Mm-hmm.
right? God didn't come down and go poof, and then all of a
No.
sudden Joe had everything.
Right.
Joe was, what he had was what he had learned from everything else over the time, and he saw what worked, what didn't, and he made things happen and put it together. Well, on the business level, I mean, some of the stuff that we tied up was great, and and he was forward thinking, so I use that. It's like in this, it says there's a tab that says PIA. It's Pilates International Association, right? Well, I did the Pilates Guild. The difference is, this, for this, there's one page, right? And he basically says, invitation, certification, there's an annual fee. PIA will keep all graduate members updated on Pilates developments and expansions around the world. The technicalities involving the Pilates methodology and trends in health and fitness. A member of the PIA can work towards being a license of a Pilates studio. So, I mean, he thought about a organization, but, there was no code of ethics, standards of practice, all the other things that you really need to have for a professional organization. So he had the idea, but I also, when I came in, I was like, well, okay, that was great, but you didn't really, it was just like, pay me $150 and I'll send you, like, this is what we're doing. It's like that sounds pretty much like the PMA, it's like you spend that money, what do you get? Not much. Right. And I was trying to look at it and say, okay, well, there's, if you were a guild member, you got a discount, you got, on equipment, on all these different, I tried to make,
Yeah.
to make it something. And it's also, a professional organization is something that is based on professionalism and, trying to be professionals and know that there's certain codes and ethics and standards that you practice by.
Hmm.
Different than just like, I'll send you information, so it
Yeah.
was something more than that.
Okay. We have a couple questions here. So
Okay.
Ben is saying, how many teachers do you think certified with this first manual in the early days?
Well, let's see. It was probably at least 100 or two.
Hmm, that's cool.
By the time, well, where do I have that here? I might have it here. By the time I finish, I can do that. I have, like the list of teachers,
Hmm.
that were certified. That was one of the things that I did was there was always, again, this was before smartphones and all that. And I would have a list that you could call and find a teacher. I had an 800 number that, you could call in and find a teacher in your area. And then when I did a website in 95, I think, and it cost me a lot of money. It was very expensive. It was, 25 grand or something, 20 to 25 grand when it was all said and done. But it had, you could type in and find a teacher wherever, and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
So that was 95. So that was before. And then when, Brooke, we'll talk about that when we talked about with Brooke and Mari, one of the requirements to be able to use a trademark was to put all the teachers that were certified listed in the back of their book.
Hmm. Yeah.
So you can kind of get a sense of that.
So now Mary is asking, will you do this again? Which I'm not sure what that is, but maybe she means these talks.
Well, I think it's the guild member. Right
Okay.
now, if you are certified, you can. The difference, the guild is still, you know, active. It's just right now it's not doing a whole lot because I don't have that many members and teachers again because when I lost the trademark, well, around 2000, we had almost 1,000 people. I mean, what people don't realize is that before there was the PMA, there was the Pilates Guild, and it had hundreds of teachers.
Hmm.
And then when I lost, that all kind of fell apart, to a certain degree, and we can talk about that later.
Yep.
But what happened was then the PMA had this opportunity to do all this stuff and bring more people, but there was a Pilates International Pilates organization way before the PMA.
It looks like Mary's asking about training, and I'm not quite sure what training, but maybe if she wants to.
Well, the training that the training that I have right now, the New York Pilates Studio teacher training is still using the 97 manual. It's Romana's manual. It's this, I mean, she modified and adjusted things based on safety and some other issues. So it's not exactly like Joe, but it's very, she changed things the least. And that's what that manual is. And we'll talk, there's a lot to talk about when we get, to talk about the second manual next weekend. So
Yeah,
we'll
next week.
leave that for then.
Yeah, on Saturday we'll talk about the second
Hmm.
manual and why there was a second manual and changes
Yep. Yep.
and such.
And
Okay,
such.
great.
I never dissolved the guild. It was always sort of available because I've been doing the training, you know, ever since. Now I did license the training for, a period of time after I lost the trademark in 2003. Romana left and they started Romana's Pilates. And then in 2005, and we'll talk about this later, I then licensed the whole system. And I had a lot, certain restrictions like, when people we're talking about the archives, well, I licensed that, so I couldn't use them
Hmm.
and do what I'm doing now, but when I had that license to a certain degree. So that was part of one of the reasons why I wasn't out there doing what I'm doing now again.
Well, I think on Monday, when we talk about teacher training in the US, we can talk a little bit more about the Pilates Guild because I see that Mary has a few questions about it. So that would be a
Yep,
good address that topic.
yep.
Great.
So, and Mary, we'll talk about how to get back into the guild because there's a guild page. There's a Facebook guild page. And you can ask to be a member. You have to, you have to send a copy of your certificate, and then that's pretty much what it takes.
I see Amy Joe's question is, so what year did the guild begin or was it established?
Well, I started it with Synergy. I started
Okay.
that process with Synergy. And so basically, even, and then once I got the trademark, I really focused on what I did. I differentiated the training from the guild and, trying to get guild members. And there was a contract, and if you wanted to become a guild member, you joined, you got access to by being a guild member, you could advertise and use the trademarks, but you had to follow us, when you do trademark, you can't just like use it any way you want
Uh-huh.
because you can mess it up if you're not doing it properly. So there was a contract that basically says you can use it, and this is how you can use it in your advertising and your business, and you can't put it in your business name. So you can that there's a restriction because basically what my lawyers told me that is if you put the name, the trademark into a business name, and then you're running the business, there's not going to be a judge that's going to, go, oh, well, you have to close your business now because I let them do that.
Mm.
So that was something you wouldn't be able to do, use the trademark in the business, but you could have other names,
Uh-huh.
which is what everybody's done anyways.
Okay.
It was between 90 and 92 is when because I started that process because when we were doing synergy, I was thinking about the same thing. Being a PT and an athletic trainer and a Feldenkrais practitioner, I just realized it's my 31-year anniversary as a Feldenkrais practitioner this year too.
Wow.
So all these anniversaries.
I
It's
know.
because somebody else put something up. It was like happy 31st. I'm like, oh yeah.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
yep.
Cool.
So, but and looking at how they try to professionalize, and that's the process. And everybody follows, that's what medicine did, that all the professions, they have a code of ethics and a standards of practice. They all of them do if they're really professional. And you can then join and be a member. So it's really, here we go, the Pilates police. It's self-policing.
Mm.
And you want to do that because if you do that and you have a standard, then the government doesn't step in, because if the government steps in, then you have a lot of restrictions. And, I
Okay.
mean, I guess if that's what you want, I mean, you can have that. But at the same time, right now, Pilates can, you can do whatever you want. If it gets licensed, then you're going to have to, if you don't follow the standards of practice, not only you can lose your license to practice.
Um, okay.
So,
What I wanted to mention, which I almost forgot, is that you have just recently published a calendar with those multiple exposure pictures that you were
yeah,
just talking about, which also commemorates the 30-year anniversary.
yes, it does.
Coincidentally, and you are selling your calendar in your Etsy store.
I am they're
Yeah.
$15 a piece. I tried to make them so that, and there's still some available. I mean, I sold quite a bit, but I printed, and so because I figured each year now I'm going to do this, this type of thing, and so they'll become collector's item because once the year's over, even the month is over, you can take that picture and put it in a frame, and it's a great wall picture.
Totally.
And
And it's color, so that's like unusual, in studios we have a
right.
lot of black and white because it's from, Joe. So
Well, it's from Joe's time. Well, and well, that's because also Joe had quite a bit of color stuff. I have it, and at some point
yes.
that will be something else. But basically this calendar, when I did the other archival calendars, they became collector's items. So I'm looking to do the same with this, and then it'll be the same type of thing. And every year it'll be different exercises because I have multiple exposure for all the exercise, pretty much almost all the exercises.
So
So
now,
we have a
yeah,
couple years to go.
if somebody's interested in buying a calendar, so they go to Etsy and what's the name of your store?
The Pilates posters. So Etsy, you got to go to Etsy, and then you got to go to the Pilates poster store, and it's there. You can order it, and and I made it so that it's probably a little late now. I made it so that you could also give them as gifts for your clients or or your teachers or whatever. So if you bought, 10, it was less, and then if you bought 20, it was less. So, I made it so that it was, the more you bought, the less they cost per piece.
Well, because I bought a bunch for my clients at the studio as holiday gifts, and I have a few left over because I sort of like I bought like a little extra just I didn't want to run out. So what I'm gonna do is when I get new clients at the studio and they buy a package of 10 sessions, I'm gonna give them a calendar.
Nice.
Yeah,
Well,
so
and
nice nice
it,
client gift.
it goes through January of next year, so you can still do 12 months even if you don't do it this month.
Yeah, I mean, it's never
Right.
really too late to buy a new calendar unless it's the last month that's on that
Yeah.
calendar.
Right. Dolly says her clients love them. I've gotten a lot of response back that way.
Yeah,
So, and so again, Cami, you can get it at the Etsy store. All
yeah,
right. So thank you for doing that little promotion for me. I appreciate that.
of course. Well, I
So,
was thinking about. I just thought about it today. I didn't even like really think about the 30 years in the calendar. I was like, oh wow, it
yeah.
totally like correlates with it perfectly.
Yep. So
Yeah,
I got something else in the mail today.
you did. Okay.
Yes. So I got another trademark registration. So I have one of my, I was using TN. Now I'm going to use the Art Circle.
Okay. Joe's.
Joe's Contrology.
Nice.
So, and I have I have to self promote again. I am doing a class tomorrow,
Oh
a
yeah.
webinar. It starts
What?
tomorrow. It's 3 weekends. It's called Understanding Joe's Contrology. And it's, one of my signature workshops, webinars that I've looked at the science, and a lot of hypotheses about movement and function and trying to come up and give you a better foundation and vocabulary about why and how it works. There is, I talk about muscles quite a bit, but I don't talk about single muscles or muscle groups. I talk about the function of muscles and the relationship to the nervous system, how they all work together, and how that's really how Joe's systems works, and not, let me pump this muscle and let me pump this group of muscles. It's not about that.
Mhm.
It's more different. It's really the muscle fiber types and how they're integrated into the nervous system and work together. And then I use, then another weekend is, looking at the synergy systems, and then there's the developmental sequence. So looking at all the different things that, how the system
What
works.
I would like to mention, which I always like to mention, is that the webinar that you're talking about, it was the first workshop I attended with you, and also Judy, who's here right now in our comments. We attended it together, so that was the first time we both met you.
Right. Well,
And
it was called something different back then,
yeah,
but it's required that this is also required if you want to do the bridge or the training. Since most people here are probably teachers, if you want to bridge into the training program, it's a required class. So if you take it, you'll have one of your requirements taken care of.
well, Judy and I attended because we were interested in you and your
Right,
teaching. We then went on to do our bridge with you.
right.
But
And then,
we didn't foresee that. We just went because we were interested in what you were saying. But then after
right,
that, we just
right.
totally got into it. So it's a really cool workshop. I definitely recommend it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All
All
right.
right. So I think we're good. So
Yep.
tomorrow we have Carol Dodge Baker. She's going to be joining us, and we're going to be here at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. She'll be talking about her time working alongside Romana, doing teacher training at SUNY Purchase and the making of the first manual, like we were talking about, and sharing some of her memories and in working with you too, of course.
So lots of recommendations for the bridging. Thank you guys. Appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm trying to, keep it going, and the manual, and when we get to the second manual, we'll talk about the first and the second, maybe a little bit tomorrow as well. So, that's the thing. It's there's so much interconnectedness, but and we can't sit here and talk for 24 hours. So we're trying to do a half hour, and
Well,
this is
that's why
even
we have
past that. This is even already,
topic. Yeah.
right. So we got to
All
get
right.
going. All
Thank
right.
you. All right.
All right. All right.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you very much. Thanks
All right.
everyone for
I'll
joining.
see you all later.
All right. We'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.